As gamers, we all have favorite games. Games that keep us coming back due to rewarding gameplay loops, satisfying mechanics, and the amazing communities built around them. However, there's a rarer subclass of games. See, all video games are art, but some games are masterpieces. You might look at a piece of wall art and think that's a nice painting, marveling at the technical soundness of the creation. However, in art there are distinctions. Some art is wall art, some art studio art, and rarely some pieces achieve the status of masterpiece. Think the Mona Lisa, the Sistine Chapel, Starry Night. These pieces are masterpieces not due to their technical soundness, but due to the deep emotional response they stir up in their observers and the indescribable feelings of wonder and mystery that they inspire. As with art, games that evoke these emotions and achieve masterpiece status are exceedingly rare. In all my years of gaming, Limbo stands alone in this class for me. Now, I've known about Limbo for years. In fact, I've known about it since it was first released as an Xbox 360 summer exclusive in 2010, when I picked up the demo after watching my cousin play a bit of the game on his console. I played the demo, which consisted of the game's first 10 minutes or so, over and over again. I was fascinated by the game, but never got the full version, and eventually it faded from my memory. That is, until the Steam Summer Sale this year when I saw Limbo listed for 99 cents. Hoping to finally finish what I'd started as a child, I picked up the game and played it through. There are really two parts to analyze with this game: the actual gameplay and puzzle mechanics, and the game's atmosphere and story. Getting into the gameplay first, Limbo, at its core, is a 2D platformer slash puzzle game, and it executes on this genre incredibly well. Notably, there are only two buttons: a jump button and an interact button, which allows you to grab and pull objects or levers. Movement speed is dictated by the force applied to the left stick on the controller. Side note, this game was clearly meant to be played on controller as it released initially for the Xbox. If you play without one, your experience may vary. The game accomplishes a remarkable amount with this simple setup. The primary challenge in this game are the puzzles. These are presented in a variety of ways. Some are based more on timing certain events like an electric shock or the swing of a pendulum. Others are weighted more to straight problem solving. And some are simply trial and error. As someone who can get annoyed with super convoluted puzzle games, I found the difficulty level here to be perfect. The longest I ever spent on a single puzzle was 25 to 30 minutes, but other than that, the solution generally presented itself within 10 minutes or so. However, that isn't to say these puzzles are unrewarding. Each puzzle presents a unique challenge, and the developers managed to make an entire puzzle game where none of the puzzles feel repetitive. This setup left me feeling a sense of accomplishment after passing each stage, and I was genuinely impressed by how creative some of these puzzles were. The game accomplishes this feeling of newness by gradually adding in new mechanics as you progress through the story, and encourages learning by doing. Basically, you will die. A lot, but this is by design. For example, when you first come to a small pond, you're given no indication of whether or not the character can actually swim. But once you've tried to navigate it and drowned, you develop a healthy fear of water for the remainder of the game. Obstacles and props start off quite simple and straightforward, dragging bear traps and pushing boxes to jump on. However, throughout the course of the game, puzzles change to incorporate living enemies, brain-infecting larvae, and eventually anti-gravity switches and magnets. In spite of my high praise for Limbo's gameplay, its atmosphere and story are far and away the standout portion of the game, and I'll go into those now. See, Limbo in medieval classic theology referred to the edge of hell. It was thought to be a place where those who died with original sin were sent, who were not assigned to the hell of the damned. In the case of this game, I believe the title and theme more closely align with the religious concept of purgatory. It's a place between heaven and hell where those who will eventually be admitted to heaven are sent to have their souls cleansed through more suffering. It's dark, I know, but it's a pretty dark game. With that in mind, the atmosphere of the game somehow perfectly captures the essence of this metaphysical place that is rarely described in literature. The game is notably entirely black and white, with the player running through a mysterious world shrouded in shadow. You could argue that this design choice is the single most impactful choice when it comes to the game's atmosphere. Peeking through the ceiling at various points are rays of light, hinting to the player that heaven awaits those who ascend from this dark world. There is no background music, which I found to be a nice change from modern games, with the only background noise being a faint bird chirping and grass blowing when you're in the wilderness or clanging when you're in an industrial setting. One thing I noted while playing this game is that after each session, I felt a sense of calm in spite of its brutal atmosphere. Honestly, this is the only game I've ever played where I felt I could go right to sleep after each session and not feel wired due to this calm atmosphere. And aided, I'm sure, by the fact that there's no color, which is far less stimulating for the brain. The game's story itself is a bit of a paradox. See, the game simultaneously has no defined narrative, and yet one of the most heart-wrenching plots I've ever experienced. If that sounds weird, allow me to explain. There is no dialogue, no written history of events, and no hints provided by the game as to what's going on. From the moment you boot in, you're immediately playing as a shadowy boy with two shining white eyes. That's all you know. He wakes up in the middle of a grassy field, and immediately the game begins. There's no start menu, no tutorial, and no button tips like we see in many modern games. And honestly, I found this so refreshing, given the way that so many games today hold players' hands in an attempt not to lose even the least devoted gamer. The world itself feels almost devoid of hope, which I think is appropriate for the purgatory setting. And the player navigates various settings within the world, moving through a forest, sewers, industrial plants, city skylines, and finally a factory. Each setting feels oddly sterile and empty, and is littered with traps. You almost feel alone, if not for the sense that you're constantly being watched and thwarted every time you try to advance. Initially, it seems like these could have been left by accident, but as I advanced through the game, it became clear that someone or something was trying to keep me from reaching my destination with all these rigged traps. Early on in the game, you run into arguably the most iconic entity, a giant spider who follows you throughout the early portions of the game, trying to stab you with his giant legs. Again, pretty dark. A little later, a band of what appear to be other humans attacks you with spears and rolls flaming cylinders down a ramp in your direction. It almost feels Perhaps rightfully so, that this world has been designed solely to stop the boy from finding what he's looking for. Now, initially, it's not clear what you're doing in this world or what you're trying to accomplish or find. But as a player, Limbo always makes you feel like you're guiding the character towards something he desperately wants to find that's extremely important. About halfway through the game, his aim is revealed when you come to a field shrouded by light with a girl sitting in it picking flowers with her back turned to you. Eventually, it's revealed that this was all an illusion, the field, the girl, but the scene makes it clear that this girl, presumably the boy's sister, is who you're trying to find in Limbo. At the end of the game, you crash through a wall and again find yourself waking up in a field. It almost seems like the game is starting over in a loop. However, you again find yourself in the field with the girl shrouded in light. She appears to be playing in the grass under a treehouse, but this time you're not hallucinating. As you, the boy, approaches, the girl looks up, hearing your footsteps, and then the game ends abruptly. It's never revealed what actually happened to the boy and his sister, with the game leaving that up to the player to interpret. And this mystery is what makes the game so special. Some cliffhangers in books and movies are frustrating and can drive you insane. But due to the ambiguous, mysterious vibe that the whole story is presented with, it feels fitting that there isn't suddenly some concrete ending to this whole story. Instead, the player uses all their experiences from the game to form an interpretation of their own. Now, I wasn't able to locate an instance of the studio explaining the story, which I believe is intentional. So I'll give my take on the story to wrap up this video. So the start menu of the game shows a treehouse, the same one that is shown in the game's final scene. Only in the start menu, the treehouse is run down and the ladder's broken. Below the treehouse, in the final places where we see the boy and girl at the end of the game, there are what appear to be two small dirt piles with flies buzzing over them. Sadly, it seems that both characters tragically lost their lives in this very spot. Now, I feel that they, boy and girl, are both to be sent to heaven. But the boy must first work through his guilt surrounding the events that led to he and his sister's fate at the treehouse. Perhaps he blames himself wrongly, or perhaps he built a shoddy floor that cracked and dropped both of them to the ground. In my opinion, the last thing he remembers when he wakes up in Limbo is being with his sister, so he begins a pursuit to find her again, not wanting to move on to the afterlife without her. The treacherous traps that you face along the way are manifestations of either his own guilt or a sin that he has yet to overcome from his life on Earth. When he finally overcomes all the traps and is reunited with his sister in the last scene, she seems blissfully unaware of the circumstance. As I mentioned, she almost seems to be playing under the tree like nothing has happened. I believe that as you approach, she snaps out of her trance and realizes where you are. You're no longer in the world anymore. The light shining down and the intact treehouse ladder in the scene suggest that after the game cuts, the brother and the sister will ascend the ladder to heaven together. At least that's my positive interpretation of the ending. Now, I've seen some other interesting theories while reading online that the various stages you work through are different stages of the boy's life, with the forest representing childhood, the men attacking you representing bullies and adolescence, and then the industrial settings representing the toil of a 9-to-5 job. Other theories suggest that the characters actually met their end in a car crash, hence the fact that some of the obstacles appear to be flaming tires and the final scene almost feels like you're crashing through a windshield. Now, if you've already played Limbo, I'd love to hear your interpretation of the game's story in the comments. And if you haven't and you made it this far, I really hope you'll give it a shot. All told, I completed this game in a little under 4 hours, and if anything, the game felt like it ended too soon. Outstanding gameplay and satisfying puzzles aside, Limbo's story and atmosphere instilled feelings in me that I didn't know a game ever could. And for that, I feel that it's a perfect game, a true masterpiece. I spent days thinking about the plot and ending of Limbo after playing, and to this day, I wonder what really happened to the boy and his sister. Thanks for watching.